Started.
Good.
Right, welcome to today's technical assistance workshop for the pre-apprenticeship and career education PACE grant program. This is round 2 of our PACE grant. For those of you who applied in round 1 and were not awarded, you've heard some of what we're going to talk about today. For those of you who are new to joining our technical assistance workshops and to applying for grants with us here in the Office of Apprenticeship, welcome. Um, We'll get into some details about the Notice of Grant opportunity here in a second. We'll talk to you a little bit about apprenticeship in New Jersey and where we're at. And we'll also give you some time at the end to ask any questions, just so you are all aware, because I know this question comes up pretty much each time. We will be providing you afterwards with the PowerPoint. We'll provide you with a copy of the NGO, some contact information at USDOL, some details and some FAQs, frequently asked questions, along with a recording of today's session so that you can either provide it to other staff if they were not able to attend, or you can refer back to it for any additional information that you may need. We're going to get into the process that you need to follow in order to get the application opened up for you as well here shortly. So please pay attention. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll get to them at the end. Usually it's easiest to do that, but if for some reason the chat's not working for you or you feel it easier to ask your question at the end, we'll give you some time to unmute yourself and ask those questions. But I do ask that during the presentation, if you can try and please keep yourself muted. That will help with less distractions and less background noise, therefore making it easier for everybody to hear everything we're trying to share during the presentation. Otherwise, I think we can get started here. So let's go. So in March of 2018, Governor Murphy announced the development of the Office of Apprenticeship here in New Jersey, which is housed at the Department of Labor, as well as the creation of a New Jersey Apprenticeship Network. The New Jersey Apprenticeship Network includes our Office of Apprenticeship. It also includes all grantees and all providers of apprenticeship here in New Jersey, including the United States Department of Labor, who oversees the Office of Apprenticeship with USDOL. Our missions in the building of the New Jersey Apprenticeship Network was for the Office of Apprenticeship to work closely with USDOL and serve as a one-stop shop for employers, nonprofits, secondary and post-secondary institutions that are interested in developing apprenticeship opportunities. We support new and expand on existing pre-apprenticeship and USDOL registered apprenticeship programs here in New Jersey. We look to establish pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs in non-traditional high-growth occupations or sectors. We look to expand the New Jersey Apprenticeship Network to facilitate interactions between industry, educational institutions, training providers, and job seekers. We hope to better align post-secondary, secondary, adult education, and occupational training to meet labor demands unique to New Jersey and develop career pathways that lead to economically sustainable wages. We also hope to help apprentices earn college credits, access to robust career counseling, and increase diversity and inclusion in apprenticeship programs. A lot of the community colleges as well as state colleges across the state have started allowing for some of the work-based trainings to equate to college credits, and you can work with some of those community colleges or colleges within your counties to see whether or not your programs would fit into that model and allow for your participants to gain some of that college credit while they're completing your program. So that's something that has been worked on heavily in the state and has started to really show some benefits and started to actually have some abilities to do so. We also look to remove economic barriers to training and upskilling through targeted investments, like our PACE grant as well as our GAINS grant, some of our other grants here in the Office of Apprenticeship. At the end of the day, we look to serve populations, targeted populations, and we ask you to provide us with information on who those targeted populations are within your application so that we can ensure that we're meeting the needs of those with economic barriers, and ensure that we're providing trainings to that population as well. So The New Jersey Apprenticeship Network has a vision that is working to develop sustainable talent pipelines by aligning pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs with the needs of employers, training providers, and job seekers. As you're all aware, apprenticeship programs are industry driven. So, with that, our programs work to lead to ensure that we're meeting the needs of those industries, meeting the needs of those employers, and trying to ensure that those employers have the ability to fulfill their backlog of staff shortages with qualified individuals and or people that are going to work towards becoming qualified, whether it be on the job or through an apprenticeship program. The New Jersey Apprenticeship Network is focused on driving economic development through skills and educational attainment, concentrating efforts on sector-focused, demand-driven training and education programs that lead to better paying careers, advanced credentials and skills attainment, and developing an ecosystem that provides multiple years of economic support to businesses and individuals for occupational skills training, leading to sustainable wages and upward mobility for workers and increasing talent pipelines for employers. We've all heard I can't find good qualified workers. Our programs, these types of programs, are here to try and get qualified workers qualified and help make those connections between what the employers are saying they need to fill and what ultimately exists out there in the workforce as far as those that are capable of going in and accepting and filling those positions. So what is a registered apprenticeship program? Registered apprenticeship program means that it's registered and approved by USDOL, and it provides a classroom and on-the-job training and on-occupation recognized as an apprentice block trade and meets the program standards of enrollment and graduation under 29 CFR 29.6. Ultimately, a registered apprenticeship program is a program that it has been reviewed and approved by USDOL that allows for the participants to learn while they earn, ultimately meaning that they have employment and that they're working towards being what a lot of industries call journeymen, but in the end, they're working towards that status while on the job, learning continuously, whether it be classroom or on the job, because there's parts of the training that are on both sides. We'll get a little bit more into that in a second. So what are the components of a registered apprenticeship program? It's employer industry driven. It has related technical instruction, which is what we call our classroom training, a sponsor or employer for the on-the-job learning, an apprentice, and it has a progressive wage structure for skill gains. This would mean that the participants would get an increase in pay as time goes forward and they become more valuable to the employers. Some current figures here in New Jersey when it comes to apprenticeship. Currently, there are 8,643 active apprentices in New Jersey. There's 1,317 total registered programs. And since Governor Murphy took office in January 2018, we've registered 716 new registered apprenticeship programs, which is over 100% statewide increase. Hired 17,670 new apprentices, issued 8,943 new industry recognized certifications of completion. And according to the numbers in the last quarter of 2017, the total apprentices has increased by approximately 1,860 apprentices, which is the highest level since 2013, and equates to a 27% net increase statewide. That number is always a moving target. It goes up and down on a weekly basis. The funny thing is we actually report on this weekly to our administration here at the Department of Labor. And that number goes sometimes from 28% up to 30%, back down to 27%. It's funny how quickly it changes, but ultimately it's referencing the active apprentices in the state of New Jersey.
Mm.
So now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Lauren Kremper Filippo, who will speak to you more about the pre-apprenticeship and career education program and the application process that you'll follow in order to get the grant submitted to us.
Hi, everybody. So, the mission of the PACE program is to create a pipeline of qualified individuals and enable them to transition into sustainable career pathways, present opportunities to underrepresented, disadvantaged populations, and remove barriers to training, drive economic development through skills and educational attainment, and promote the value of pre apprenticeship and registered apprenticeship programs. The elements of pre-apprenticeship are an approved training and a curriculum, strategies for long-term success, access to appropriate support services with a one-stop connection, promote greater use of registered apprenticeship, meaningful hands-on training that does not displace paid employees, and facilitated entry and/or articulation. And it's important to note that applicants must have an established connection to at least one registered apprenticeship program or sponsor.
Just for clarification purposes with this note at the end, the program that you partner with that is a registered apprenticeship program, that program has to be approved prior to the application being submitted. So it can't be a program that's working with USDOL to get an approved program. You have to be partnered with a registered apprenticeship program that's already approved with USDOL, and you have to show that partnership and provide a commitment letter from that partner showing that they're working with you and they're willing to accept the participants that you're going to place into a registered apprenticeship. There is a requirement of 25% of all of your participants must enter into a registered apprenticeship program with the PACE grant. So that's why there is that requirement.
Career apprenticeship programs that target high growth, high vacancy, or emerging industries are highly encouraged to apply, including but not limited to the following targeted industry sectors: advanced manufacturing, biopharma and life sciences, energy, utilities and infrastructure, retail, hospitality and tourism, financial services, insurance, transportation, logistics and distribution, information technology and cybersecurity, renewable energy and the green economy, healthcare, STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, construction and building trades, including lead abatement, public service, educational services, and/or early childhood education. Note that organizations awarded fiscal year 2024 Round 1 PACE contracts are not eligible to apply for fiscal year 2024 Round 2 PACE funding. Round 2 applications are open to those not funded in fiscal year 24 Round 1, as well as new applicants.
If you were a recipient of PACE in the past, it's fine. You can apply for this grant. You just cannot apply if you received it during this fiscal year already, for clarity purposes. Also, these targeted industry sectors are something we would look upon favorably if your training was in one of these, but it's not mandatory that it is in one of these industries or sectors. It's just ultimately this is where our concentration lies based on the needs of state um, employers.
PACE aims to strengthen access to registered apprenticeships for individuals by recruiting from targeted populations and providing appropriate services to enable participation. So the targeted populations where greater weight will be given to proposals able to recruit from the following populations: women, minorities, youth, unemployed, vocational school and post-secondary students, ex-offenders, veterans, persons with disabilities, WIOA eligible individuals, which is the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, and/or underrepresented populations. Support services include but are not limited to childcare, transportation, obtaining a driver's license, expungement programs, communicating a criminal background to employers, housing services, addressing substance abuse, obtaining a high school equivalency diploma or GED, mentoring, guidance and counseling, and/or financial literacy.
You do not have to include these supportive services, but it is allowable for you to budget for supportive services. These are just some of the supportive services that could exist, and then you may want to include others. Ultimately, feel free to, but this is just some explanations of those. And these targeted populations are not listed in any specific order. There's no greater weight given to one over another. Ultimately, these are the targeted populations that we look to ensure that we're providing services to, but like I said earlier, it's looked upon favorably. It's not mandatory that you serve just these populations. It can be other populations as well.
Funding and contract information. Funding for fiscal year 2024 Round 2 is expected to be $2 million and is contingent upon availability of funds. The contract length will be 18 months. Competitive proposals will have a maximum cost per head of $12,000. Awardees of initial contract may also be eligible for a one-year renewal based on performance and the availability of funds. And awarded applicants will have administrative responsibilities, including but not limited to the archiving of records, completing monthly reports, and attending required meetings.
So for clarification purposes, when we say maximum cost per head of $12,000, you have to serve, depending on the number of participants you're going to serve. If you say you're going to serve 10 participants, the maximum allowable budget is $120,000, 12,000 times times the 10 participants. That's the maximum. You can be less than 12,000 per participant. It cannot be above $12,000 per participant. Please don't get too excited about that second bullet about awardees of initial contract may also be eligible for a 1-year renewal. Technically, we don't have renewal contracts for PACE as of right now. It's not that we can't do it. We like to share with you ahead of time that there is the possibility of it, but it hasn't happened at this point for PACE in the past. We do give extra points to applicants who have had past performance that was above and beyond what they were contracted for. So that is something that does definitely occur right now. We also take points away from those past performers who performed poorly and didn't meet the requirements. But we do not currently have any system where we extend contracts beyond the grant period with additional funds. That does not currently exist. It could exist, but it's just, I just want to make sure it's clear and everybody understands. Technically, this application is for an 18-month grant program, and the funds that you request are the funds that you're going to receive if approved. And there is no current expectation of extension beyond the 18 months for this grant period. You can apply in the future, and you may be able to obtain additional funds in the future based on good performance, but that's a different situation.
Quality placement goals. At the conclusion of the grant, PACE grantees will be expected to graduate and place 80% of participants in one of the following outcomes. Minimum of 25% placed in a USDOL registered apprenticeship program, employment related to the pre-apprenticeship training received at no lower than $16 per hour, and or admission into a post-secondary college or occupation-specific career training program consistent with the pre-apprenticeship program. As the grantee, you can include a needs-based stipend into your budget to enable participation. Your stipend payments can be paid to the participants on a weekly or biweekly basis, but cannot exceed $250 per week.
So just for the purposes of sticking to what we already spoke about, if you're going to serve 10 participants, a minimum of 8 of them have to receive an outcome. Of those 8, 25% have to be entered into registered apprenticeship, and the rest, the other 75% of those placed, have to go into either employment in related to the pre-apprenticeship training, making no less than $16 an hour, or into post-secondary or college training. As Lauren said, the stipends are up to $250 per week, and they have to be paid out and minimally in a biweekly time frame. You can do it weekly if you'd like, but you can't do it any longer than biweekly. Main reason being is the stipend is expected. It's not a salary to these individuals. It's expected to meet needs that they have in order to be able to continue to participate in your program. And the expectation is if you don't provide it to them at least biweekly, you could negatively impact their ability to continue participating. So whether they're using it for transportation or they're using it for childcare, that stipend is going to be used for something that's going to help them be able to participate in your program. So that's why there's a requirement of it being issued minimally biweekly.
Okay, we're going to talk about the federal definition of a career pathway. A career pathway is a combination of rigorous, high-quality education, training, and other services that align with the skill needs of industries in the economy or the state or regional economy involved, prepares an individual to be successful in any of a full range of secondary or post-secondary education options, including registered apprenticeships, includes counseling to support an individual in achieving education and career goals, includes, as appropriate, education offered concurrently with and in the same context as workforce preparation activities and training for a specific occupation or occupational cluster. Organizes education, training, and other services to meet an individual's needs that accelerate the individual's educational and career advancement to the extent practicable, enables an individual to attain a secondary school diploma or recognized equivalent and at least one recognized post-secondary credential, And last, helps an individual enter or advance with a specific occupation or occupational cluster.
Welcome to the world of federal definitions. They're always fun to read. It's a good read.
The application process. First steps if you're considering applying. Ensure that you're in an eligible entity to apply, and these page numbers correspond to the NGO. So that's on page 12. That the authorized official, or the AO, registers in IGX, and you can refer to page 21. The authorized official submits the letter of intent via email, page 21 and 27. NJDOL approves the authorized official in IGX and provides access to the application. You want to obtain a tax clearance certificate from the New Jersey Division of Taxation. Please refer to pages 24 and 28. And last, that you register with New Jersey Department of Treasury, and that website's NJ Start on page 28.
So once again, for clarification purposes, the authorized official is a title that is issued to basically the person who's responsible for signing off on contracts from your organization. Authorized official is the highest level provided within our IGX database. So that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have somebody called an authorized official at your company or your organization, but that's who that person would be. It would be the person capable of signing off on contracts. Um, the letter of intent, we're going to show you a sample of it on the next slide, but page 27 in the notice of grant opportunity is where you can find this sample. It's the exact same sample that's in the notice of grant opportunity. You can copy and paste it onto your letterhead and use it in order to provide the details that are needed within that letter of intent, and submit it to us. We'll tell you how to submit it in a second here. The tax clearance certificate, please don't wait to reach out to the Division of Taxation to get this tax clearance certificate. Some people think it's just a formality and they can get it in 5 minutes. I promise you, if you think that, you're going to run into troubles. If you don't think that, maybe you will get it in 5 minutes, but ultimately, the tax clearance certificate can take anywhere from 3 days to 3 weeks to get. And I don't want you to be in that 3 week category and not be able to get it in time to be able to apply for this grant. It is a requirement in order to be an applicant and in order to be considered for funding. Without that tax clearance certificate, we cannot issue funding. I actually had a recipient of one of our grants lose their funding, and we had to pull their funding away from them because they did not get a tax clearance certificate submitted to us timely. And that is not something I have control over. It's a state law that requires us to have it. Um, as far as the registering with Department of Treasury and NJ Start, you may already be registered. We ask that you check and make sure that you're active with NJ Start. Sometimes if it's been a while and you haven't used it, it'll become inactive. So just check and make sure that your registration with NJ Start is active, and be prepared to provide us with a vendor ID number that we can utilize, because that's how we get payment to you if you are approved and funded with this grant. So that's just some additional details that'll be helpful to you in moving forward.
So here is the template for the letter of intent. This is what you are to submit. Don't modify it. This is it. So this is the document that after you register in IGX, that you will submit to our team, and we will grant you your access. Um, Pretty
Yes,
straightforward.
as Lauren said, yeah, don't make edits to this except for what you see in parentheses in that middle bolded section. Where you see it in parentheses, don't leave provide your organization's name. Actually enter your organization's name. Don't leave provide the industry occupation area you wish to apply for. Please enter the industry and occupation that you're going to be providing training for. Next to all of those headers there in that section below that, you're just going to provide us with the details that are specific to what we ask for there. For those of you who are unaware or don't know what a unique entity identifier is, it's a number that is provided. It's a number, but it includes letters and numbers. It's provided to you through sam.gov. Ultimately, we'll provide you with instructions on how to get it with the documentation that we provide you after this meeting, but ultimately it is required in order for us to issue funding to you. You do not have to have it in order to apply for the grant, but you will need it if we get approval for funding, and we try to go to contract. It's taken over for the Duns and Bradstreet number, the number that you used to use for this type of stuff. Now they use unique entity identifiers instead. I can't tell you whether it'll be easy for you because it is different for everybody, but sam.gov is the where you would go in order to get the process started. And like I said, we'll provide you with instructions after this presentation on how to go about getting one of those. Once you've completed entering all this information, signed and dated it, then you'll email it to the apprenticeship unit at dol.nj.gov email address that's listed at the bottom of the form. Actually, it's listed at the bottom and the top, so you can't miss it, hopefully.
So your proposal components, and these are the required documents, and all required information must be submitted in the IGX system. Your applicant information, the counties you're going to serve, your consortium partners, any previous funding, PACE deliverables, program narrative, an executive summary, implementation plan, a program sustainability plan, your tax clearance certificate, budget summary and details, and any miscellaneous attachments.
When you enter your consortium partners, there is a section for you to provide a letter of support or a commitment letter from those consortium partners. I suggest to you that those consortium partners letters of support or commitment letters provide some level of commitment that partner is providing to you in your program when it comes to placement. You know, at the end of the day, if they're the registered apprenticeships partner that you're going to be partnering with, they should say we're willing to accept a certain number of your participants as registered apprentices. If they're an employer partner, they should say they're going to be willing to accept a certain number. They don't have to say who at this point, but ultimately, if they commit to a specific number, that'll give you the strongest commitment and the strongest partnership ability for your grant. It'll look best for your applications, and it'll make your application that much stronger. So just want to share that tidbit of information.
So let's look at the proposal. So your executive summary, and it should be a maximum of 3 pages. Your projective project plan chart, which is on page 29 and it's attachment 3 of the NGO, and an overview of proposal highlighting your key points in relation to this NGO. Your program narrative and suggested maximum of 20 pages is your training plan, which will detail objectives, plan structure, and anticipated quality outcomes, which include your training design and outline, work experiences, the connection to the registered apprenticeship, connection to employers, post-secondary placement after pre-apprenticeship completion, if applicable, retention support and alternate placements, supportive services, expected outcomes, and your administrative responsibilities. Here's that attachment 3, which is the projected project plan. So in the chart, you're going for each quarter, enter the following information. Your participants to be enrolled, which is the total number of PACE participants enrolled, both new and previously. Your expenditure, you're going to provide the estimated expenditure of PACE grant funds for each quarter of the grant in each of the following categories. Personnel, which is salary and fringe benefits, and non-personnel, such as marking materials and office supplies, and direct student costs, such as books, instructional materials and supplies, stipends, safety equipment, etc. Your implementation plan, maximum of 4 pages. You're going to describe how the training plan will be implemented. Your project schedule, which will include timelines for benchmarks and program completion, as well as recruitment and placement dates. And if you have multiple training rounds, you're going to include estimated start and end dates and a plan for retention activities for the participants. Your sustainability plan is a strategy for long-term success absent of this grant funding. Evaluation criteria. Note that all applications are considered new applications and will be evaluated based on quality, comprehensiveness, completeness, accuracy, and appropriateness to the NGO. This is a competitive process and applications are reviewed by a selection committee using a pre-established set of requirements. And now I'll turn this back over to Bill for the IGX registration.
Right. So if you haven't heard me enough, Good for you. You get to listen to me a little bit longer. I apologize. But ultimately, what we're going to go over now is the process for becoming registered in IGX. For those of you who are already registered in IGX, have used the application system in the past, are aware of what it is, know what it is, you do not have to re-register in the IGX database in order to be able to apply. We're just going over this for those who have not been in there in the past. But what we do ask is that you get the letter of intent completed and submitted to us so that we can find your registration and your organization, give you access to the application, and then we'll inform you of the username that is in the system currently that we have approved already for you in IGX. But for those of you who have never used IGX in the past, you will have to complete this process and still submit that letter of intent. That letter of intent is what tells us to look for your registration in IGX. So know that once you complete this process, you won't be able to just go back into IGX, type in your username and password and get in. It won't give you access until you've submitted that letter of intent and we go in and approve your access into the database. So first steps are to go to the website, which is njdol.intelligrants.com. Once you get to that page, you'll find that you come up to a login page. Under login, you'll see a section that says new user. You'll click on that and it'll bring up this new user registration form. You'll provide all the details that are asked for on this new user registration form. And in the circled section at the bottom, you'll enter PACE, P-A-C-E. That will just allow for it to be easier for us to find your registration in the system once you've submitted it. But it's not necessarily mandatory, but it will help us find your registration quicker and hopefully make it easier for us to give you access. Once you've completed this, you'll click register and that'll submit your registration to us for approval. It does not give you access. Once again, it only submits your registration for approval. Once that's submitted and your letter of intent is provided to us, we'll go in, we'll approve your user name and organization, and we'll give you access to the application. You'll then get an email from us saying you've been approved to apply for the PACE grant. In that email, we'll provide you with a user guide on how to complete the application, as well as inform you of the of your username, sorry, for the database, IGX database. Once you get that email from us and you have the user guide, you'll go back to the https://njdol.intelligrants.com web address, and you'll enter the username and password that you created when you registered with the system, whether you registered now or in the past. You'll click login, and that'll bring you into your dashboard page. Your dashboard page will look exactly like you see here on the screen. On the right-hand side, you'll see a section called My Opportunities. You'll click on the filter button under My Opportunities, and it'll bring up the ability to filter through what opportunities exist from the department. You'll enter under Provider, New Jersey Department of Labor and Workforce Development. It's a drop down, so you'll choose it. And next to that, you'll type in the word PACE. You'll click search, and it'll bring up the PACE application 2024 round 2 opportunity right below it under My Opportunities. You'll click on that hyperlink, which will bring you right into the process of starting an application. When you do that, you'll see this this section on the left pop up. You'll just click agree, telling us that you understand what the grant is and that you do want to apply. And that will bring you right into the application to start completing the application. You do not have to start the application at that point or complete the application at that point. You can go back, you can go out of the system and come back to it at a later date. Just know that when you log back in, it'll show up under My Tasks on your dashboard. You can also click the home button anywhere, whenever you're anywhere. It'll bring you back to your dashboard page, but your application, until you submit it, will always be under My Tasks in the dashboard. You can get back to it just by clicking on the hyperlink under Name. If you click on the hyperlink under Organization, it'll just bring into your organizational information. It will not bring you into your application. So if you want to get into the application and complete it, click on the hyperlink under Name. Okay. Once you're in the application, though, this is what it'll look like. You'll start on your document landing page, which is just some basic information about your organization. You'll notice on the left-hand side, there's a form menu. That form menu includes all the pages that are part of the PACE application. All of these pages have a square box next to it that are empty currently until you enter information. Once you complete that page and there's no errors on the page, there'll be a check mark in that box. If you enter information on the page but don't complete it and there are errors on the page, it'll have an exclamation point in that box. If you haven't started that page, it'll stay blank. You do not have to do these pages in any specific order. You can bounce around and do them in any order you wish, but ultimately you have to complete all of the pages. Most of these pages are mandatory. The miscellaneous attachments page is not. And then some of the schedules, schedule A, B, C, of your budget, you may not have line items within them. So if you don't, that's fine. They aren't mandatory either. But if you have any budget line items within any of those sections of the schedules, you will have to complete them. And if you do have any salaries as part of Schedule A Part 1, you will have to complete Schedule A Part 2. It is mandatory. They're kind of attached. But ultimately, all of these pages need to be completed. Once they're completed and you're ready to move on, you'll follow this next slide. The first thing you'll do is scroll down in that same menu where you had all the application forms, and you'll find a section called Tools. Under Tools, you'll see something called Document Validation. You'll click on it, and it'll just validate that all the pages that you were supposed to complete have been completed and there's no errors on them. If nothing comes up, you can move forward. If something comes up, you go back to those pages and make sure you complete what needs to be fixed on those pages. Sometimes you just have to go back to them and resave the pages, but most times you have to go back and fix an error on the page, and then you can come back and redo a document validation. Once you get a document validation, it comes back clear and that there are no issues on the application. You can then go scroll all the way down to status options at the bottom and click application submitted. Will do just that. It'll submit your application to us for review. Um, at that time, this box will pop up saying, are you sure you want to submit your application? I promise you'll be ready to, because you will not want to continue doing this any longer. And you'll click OK. But for those of you who maybe say, oh, you know what, I want to go back and look at this, you can click cancel and it won't submit your application right now. Just know that you can submit your application at any time. We can send it back to you. You're not negatively impacted if you submit your application early and then say, oh, I forgot something, I need to do it. Just let us know. We'll send it back to you. You won't be negatively impacted. The only thing that'll negatively impact you is if you don't submit it before the due date. But we'll get into that in a second. But once your application is submitted, there's nothing else that you guys need to do at that time. It then moves over to us. It will no longer show up in your My Tasks because it's no longer in a setting where you have to do something with it. It'll show up in our My Tasks so that we can then start the process of getting your applications reviewed for panel and move forward for decision on whether or not funding will be issued. Some important dates are by noon, April 5th is the due date for your letter of intent. If you can't get it in earlier than that, I suggest you do. Main reason being, the longer you wait to get that letter of intent in, the longer it is before you're going to be able to start your application. So give yourself as much time as possible in order to get that application completed and make it as strong as you possibly can, because ultimately that application is what we use in order to decide whether or not funding is going to be issued to your organization. Without a strong application, you do not give yourself a very good chance. So giving yourself more time is always in your best interest, especially considering you're using technology and there's so many variables in life in general nowadays. You know, I would hate for anybody to not get the ability to apply or to put a lot of work into it and not get their application completed in time. Or for it to be considered to with the best possible submittal that you could put together. The other important date is noon, April 12th, which is the due date of the application. That means you have to have completed that process of clicking application submitted by noon, April 12th. I do not anticipate there being any extensions provided on that date. So we have a competitive process and we try to hold everybody to the same standard. So at the end of the day, noon, April 12th is the due date. You can submit it at any time before April 12th. Like I said earlier, We would be happy to send it back to you if you email us and tell us that you need it back and you need to complete something, but you'd always want to make sure you do it before noon, April 12th. Once again, please don't wait until the last second on April 12th to submit. You never know when technology issues are going to come up or any other issues. I would hate for you to do all this work and not be able to get an application submitted on time and then for it not to be considered for funding. So please try and get it submitted much earlier than noon, April 12th, but that is the drop dead deadline. Just know that once the applications are submitted, within 45 days of that application due date, we'll hold a panel where we'll review and score all the applications. Those scores will then be put into an executive review process for approval by our administration, and notifications will be sent out to all applicants on determination of whether or not funding has been issued or not. So you'll receive a determination either way. But that'll all happen within about a 45-day period. My expectation is by the end of May, you should hear from us on whether or not you have been awarded. And then we'll move forward with a grant period starting sometime in June. Whether it'll be June 1st or June 15th, I can't really answer that specifically yet, but it'll be somewhere in June when it starts. And as we said earlier, it'll be an 18-month grant period. Some contact information for us here in the New Jersey Office of Apprenticeship. James Manning is the Assistant Director of the Office of Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning. Myself, Bill Starbuck, I am the Supervisor of all grants within the Office of Apprenticeship. And for any general inquiries to email, you can email the apprenticeship unit at dol.nj.gov email address listed here at the bottom. That's where you're going to provide us with your letter of intent. It'll be also be where you reach out if you needed to ask about the submittal of your application. If you're just curious, did it get submitted? Because I don't know what else is happening, you can email us and we'll let you know. But that email address is usually the best email address. It does come to me as well, so you don't have to email me separately. And ultimately, all of us on the team here in the Office of Apprenticeship get those emails when you send it to that general inquiry email address. With that, I'm going to turn it over to questions. So I'm going to start with the chat and see what's in there. And then afterwards, if anybody has any questions that weren't entered into the chat, we can open it up for that. But if you'd like to enter any questions into the chat while I'm answering questions, feel free. It's always best to have them from the chat. Will we be able to receive these slides for further review after the presentation? Yes, we will provide you with the presentation. We'll provide you with a frequently asked questions document. We'll also provide you with a copy of this video of this presentation. We did record it. So we'll provide you with a whole bunch of stuff after the presentation. You'll probably get it within 24 hours. It all depends on how quickly our marketing team here at the department can kind of post this video onto our YouTube page. That's the only question that's in the chat. Are there any other questions that anybody wants to ask? Please feel free at this time to unmute yourself and ask those questions, or as I said, type them in the chat and ask me as many as you want. I say that because I am able to be much more forthcoming with my answers during these types of presentations because I'm doing it to a group of individuals than I am on a individual case-by-case basis. If you just email me and ask a bunch of questions, there may be questions I cannot answer for competitive purposes. So if you have questions, this is usually the best environment to ask them. If you ask a question that I think makes more sense to pull offline, we'll do that as well. Kellen, if you would like to unmute yourself, please feel free.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the presentation and all the helpful information.
No problem.
I appreciate it a lot. I do have a question in regards of a comment you made. You said that the PACE participants must move into registered apprenticeship programs, right? We were, fortunately, grant both PACE and grants, and for fiscal year 2023, round 2. And so I was wondering, because we're applying for both pacing and gains. And so, but we are applying for both around the same time. Would that be a problem?
It's not a problem as far as eligibility to do so. You can. I will say if you think about it from a grand scheme of things, it doesn't really make sense for you to apply for a pre-apprenticeship program and an apprenticeship program simultaneously, because ultimately that pre-apprenticeship program is what prepares them to enter into the registered apprenticeship program. So when they're running simultaneously, you could limit yourself on the apprenticeship program, and we wouldn't want you to limit your ability to meet your outcomes on entry into that registered apprenticeship program because they were in the pre-apprenticeship program for such a large portion of the time frame. Because you're not going to get to pick your time frame necessarily. You know, there's no pick. You know, we're going to set a start and an end date for pace and gains, and in this case, if you're applying for them at the same time, they're going to start around the same date and end around the exact same date. So I will say that there's nothing that's telling you you can't do that. I'm just saying, unless you could develop a timeline or a process within your plans that make sense, it would probably not make sense to do both. I will also add to that, not that it has anything to specifically to do with this presentation, we will have a round one of pace and gains that we do starting probably around October of this year. So if you were to apply for PACE right now and get it and then apply for gains then, that might make more sense, but that's ultimately up to you to decide what you want to do. I'm just sharing information. There is nothing that restricts you from doing anything that you're interested in doing, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. And we have a couple pre-apprentices who will be ready to move
Mm-hmm,
into the gains
mm-hmm,
or the apprenticeship program.
mm-hmm,
And also, we already had some programs that were kind of set up that way to prepare them to move into like vocational training, to to a job that pays them better or
mm-hmm.
more. So that's why I was asking.
Sure. Yep. I'm just sharing, I guess to the best of my ability, what would make sense from a programmatic standpoint from a panel member. If I was a panel member and I was looking at it and you told me I'm applying for PACE and applying for gains simultaneously, there could be some confusion by that panel member in that situation. And that's the confusion, what I just told you.
Mhm. No,
Once
no,
again, you can speak to other things that might eliminate those confusions. Just make sure you're clear on those specific
no,
points.
and I appreciate it because it's something that it totally makes sense. So it's something to consider definitely.
Mhm. Did you have any other questions, Kellen, or anybody else?
Not at the moment.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So for the record, just so everybody's aware, this is the second technical assistance workshop we provided for PACE. So we will not have any additional technical assistance workshops after this for PACE. Please get those letter of intents completed. For those of you who need to register in the IJX database, get that completed, submit that letter of intent and those registrations as soon as possible so that we can get you access to the application. And then really start working on those tax clearance certificates with the Division of Taxation over at Treasury as soon as you can. Those are your next steps. I promise you, I'm not sharing that information for any other reason other than it's in your best interest. If you wait and you take time and you let it go longer, you're just you're strengthening other people's applications because you're giving them a better opportunity at being considered for funding. So it's just something to take into consideration. Uh, I don't see any additional questions. I don't have anybody asking to unmute. So with that, if I don't have anything additional from you guys, thank you for participating in today's session. We do really appreciate you being to being here to participate, and we look forward to reading your applications and working more closely with you guys in the near future.